Welcome, everybody, to a new UFO Man episode. My name is Tim, or UFO Man. My host, my friend, is Tom Reed. And tonight we have a special guest. His name is Christopher O'Brien. He is a well known author of a series of books called Mysterious Valley. We will show them shortly so that you can see their covers and know where he has them available for you to purchase. Um, also,
I'm not a bookseller, but yeah.
but we want to advertise your books.
Oh, good.
So,
Well, thank you.
in regards to yourself, Christopher, honestly, being human, I kind of misplaced your bio. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
You want the Shucks version, or
Oh,
you
the
know? I mean,
factual.
Whatever.
I've been involved in this particular aspect of investigative work to obsession levels almost, going back to 1992, and in that first 10 years that I started, from 92 to 2002, I underwent a exhaustive investigation and research project in the San Luis Valley in south central Colorado, which extends down into New Mexico and all the way to Taos, New Mexico, for anyone that cares to look it up on a map. Anyway, in those 10 years, I covered everything from the folklore and the historical information with the first incursion of Europeans into North America, the Spanish, how that devolved into very unique religious, Christian, conservative, almost Arabic in that the penitentes would flog themselves, crucify one of their members, march across cactus fields barefoot. There's a whole aspect of the Southwest United States, especially the lower Rocky Mountain area, that's really not been exposed culturally to the rest of to the rest of the population. There's some very unique things going on there, as well as some unique aerial phenomena, strange creatures, areas that seem to have the ability to throw one forward and backward in time. I mean, the list goes on and on. I wrote 3 books about this investigative work, this field investigations, over the 10-year period, 92 to 2002. And Lawrence Rockefeller funded my work for a couple of years. Most people don't know about that. I don't try to make it a big deal about me in the process. This book, I did go ahead and fess up and show what it's like being an investigator, going through some very, very amazing experiences and meeting some very amazing individuals. And I've been very, very interested in areas where regional groups of people or local groups of people tend to share common cultural experiences and nuts and bolts experiences in their reality. And I think that it varies from group to group and region, but there are some commonalities that piece them, that give structure to all of these various so-called paranormal events, if you will. Everything from UFO sightings to religious miracles to lost treasure legends, crypto creatures. The list goes on, and I cover all this in my book, and I also show my axioms of my rules of investigation. In my first book, I lay out the things that I learned that were really crucial and important, kind of a formula to follow if you're interested in doing this type of work yourself. And those 13 rules of investigation, I don't think have gotten enough acknowledgement and attention, because they through the years I've I've really I've come to pat myself on the back, get double jointed for coming up with that, because I think it's really important for all these people that are interested in this subject now, who are going out looking for Bigfoot and banging on trees or flashing lights and doing meditations to draw in the ETs, or sit outside Skinwalker Ranch and hope to see a wolfman walk by. There's a way to go about it, and unfortunately, the media is providing a whole nother training program for aspiring investigators.
With respect to Skinwalker, I mean, you investigated that way back when, right? Before a lot of these other people have, correct?
I was the first person from outside of Utah to investigate that case. Yeah.
What do you make of it? What's your personal take?
It could be the most important case that I've ever heard of. I do think that there's something going on there. I think it's wrapped around other agendas that are being enacted there.
What kind of agendas?
Well, anytime you start throwing millions of dollars around and start looking at one piece of real estate, it brings to mind all kinds of potential scenarios that I can't really go into my thinking on that, because it's just I've gotten in too much trouble over the years chasing down stories.
Well, just from over the years of what you've heard, what the propaganda and what makes the news and what's really happening, and I'm sure there's a variance there.
Oh yeah.
So, tell me about that variance.
Well, I was very fortunate to be able to go up there before the original article in the Deseret News came out that announced the whole thing. The article that Bigelow read and then went up and bought the ranch. The writer, Zach Van Eck, was aware of my work in the San Luis Valley, and prior to the Deseret News article being published, he called me and introduced himself and said, "We have a mutual friend, and I know about your work in the San Luis Valley." And I called him to find out more and find out about you. And I'm calling to talk to you about this case that's going on, or a scenario. And he told me about his article that he had researched, and told me about Junior Hicks and Frank Salisbury, who are the go-to guys in the Uinta Basin in that area, all through the late 60s, 70s, and 80s. Junior just died a few years ago. Science teacher Frank Salisbury was a doctor, and he also I think he was a science teacher as well at one of the Utah universities. Anyway, they had been documenting all kinds of stuff going on in the Uinta Basin, which is that kind of central, southern, eastern portion of Utah. It's one of the most enigmatic areas, I think, in my opinion, in the United States. The stuff that goes on in Skinwalker is almost like, watch the right hand while the real stuff's going on further south and west of there. It's kind of a red herring. It's to keep people's attention.
Public discussion?
Yeah, I think so, and investigative community attention as well.
But you wouldn't rule out that things do happen there, or do you think that they're just using that?
No, absolutely not. I saw proof of it with my own eyes that things happen there. I mean, he told me about the portals that open up in front of the front pasture, where they open up in front of the ranch house.
All right.
And he said the last time it happened a couple of weeks ago, they must have had a rookie driver, because usually they kind of float through the aperture in the sky opens up, and these triangular craft about 40 feet They float through and then either shoot off these glowing refrigerator-sized objects and refrigerator-shaped objects, or they take off. The triangle takes off. And he said that 2 weeks before I had been up there, so this would have been the end of the first week, beginning of the second week of June, 1996. He said that this one came flying through, and he said it must have been a rookie because he didn't stop, and he sheared off the tops of those cottonwood trees right there. And
right.
he took me over.
Hang on, one thing, if you don't mind. So at the entrance, there's these portals, correct? You're referring to the portal?
They move around.
All right, and what flies through? Is it
a 40-foot triangle? Terry Sherman claimed.
Okay, so is it like a totally physical thing, or does it look like it's?
It sheared off the tops of a 60, 70-foot tall cottonwood trees.
Okay, so how big is this portal? The portal is higher then?
Yeah, it was about 50, 60 feet off the ground. And the thing came through, and before it could stop, it had sheared the tops of the trees off, and they were on the ground. They were
So it came from the portal?
Yeah, it came through the portal from there into here, and instead of kind of coming through and floating through like a helicopter, it was coming through more like a
missile.
A missile or a jet plane or something. He said it came through, and it took the tops of his trees off, and I went over and looked at him. And I've done a lot of logging. I've used chainsaws professionally. I've hauled wood. I've sold wood during the winter to make money. I know a little bit about what, especially out there. You can tell when a cedar tree or a pinon tree gets busted by something, and you can tell when a cottonwood tree gets busted by something. It's very much. It's a lightweight wood. It's spongy. It's extremely difficult to break. It bends, and these treetop they were lopped off, and there's no way that he climbed up there and was able to do that. I mean, physically, you can tell if somebody has used a power tool to cut something, and these were busted, and they had already started through the process of losing the chlorophyll and turning yellow, but yellowish brown at this point. But I was impressed by that. I also saw some of the indentation marks in the pasture. He claimed that he had a load specialist come out from one of the wildcatting crews. The guy, that was his job, is figuring out how much pressure the ground could take for heavy equipment and stuff. And he said whatever it was, it weighed about 9 tons. And these triangles were 14 inches, punched into the ground.
The legs.
Whatever the triangle array, if you want to call them legs, you can. But it was punched into hardpan. He said that whatever it was about weighed as much as a railroad boxcar.
And this was back in the 90s?
Yeah, first week of July, 96 is when I talked to him.
Did they get any film on any of this?
Yeah, he told me he had video, and I have a way of doing things. I thought this was going to be the beginning of a very cool investigation and relationship, and actually it was, until he signed the non-disclosure agreement with Bigelow, and then he couldn't talk to me anymore. But it was interesting. I saw the whole transition process from Terry selling the ranch to NIDS, the National Institute for Discovery Sciences, and then being kept on as the ranch manager. And for that whole first year, he was still up there, but he couldn't talk to anybody legally. He talked to me a bunch before, that month before he finalized the deal and signed the NDA. I was on the phone with him when that incident where his dogs went running off chasing the ball of blue light.
Yeah, I heard about that.
I was literally on the phone with Terry when that happened. He was giving me a blow-by-blow description on the phone, and I could hear the horses whinnying. I could hear his wife saying, "Did you see that?" I could hear the dogs barking and running off in the dark, and him saying, "I got to talk to you later. I got to go, get my dogs." And they ended up being 3 grease piles from some unknown energy source. He found them.
Was that blue object the size of a softball
Yeah.
sitting around the pasture?
Yeah, dimmed their lights, checked out a couple of his horses, and it also checked Gwen out, his wife. It freaked Terry out. That's when that's when the dogs went chasing off after it, and he told me he'd call me back, and he didn't. And I called him the next morning, and he was not happy. Let's put it that way. I mean, I wouldn't be either. I mean, I couldn't imagine, going through losing 3 dogs in that manner. That's just not right.
Have there ever been cattle mutilations or anything, animals that had been mutilated there?
Yeah.
What do you know?
I'm not sure how many, but one of the most famous ones probably has the record for shortest time duration between the animal being seen alive and then being found mutilated. I mean, hell, Terry, it was broad daylight. It was in the morning. Terry and Gwen were out checking the newborn calves and their mamas. I think they were putting ear tags on and registering the cow, giving them their shots. I think there was a litany of things they were doing, but they went out into the pasture and they, did one mama and her baby, then they did another one, and they saw a mom and a baby about 300 yards down the pasture, and they went down there and did whatever they were doing that day, and it took them about, I've heard anywhere between 15 and 40 minutes to come back the way they came, because that was the last one, the furthest one out. And when they came back, the ones they had just checked, the mother was sitting there mooing, and they saw the calf was on the ground, laid out, perfectly missing its right front leg, the upper respiratory organs. All the parts were laid out on the ground. There was no blood or any indication of any predator or scavenger action, and the thing looked like it had been experimented on and left back in a presentation kind of a manner. And Terry immediately called NIDS, and they had a veterinary pathologist, a microbiologist, and a number of other individuals who shall remain nameless that were on site. They flew up in Bigelow's plane, and they were on site within 3 hours. I mean, the thing was literally still warm. And they did a complete scientific examination of the carcass. They found evidence of teeth marks. They found evidence of sharp implements. You have I have never heard of a case happening when the rancher and a family member is in the same pasture in broad daylight as one of these occurrences. It's unprecedented.
The teeth marks, were they found to be animal teeth marks or human?
The assumption I've always made is I thought they were animal, but that's a good question. I've never actually seen it stated.
And you wrote a book about all the mutilations as well, didn't you?
The only book that matters. Good luck. Anybody else wants to try to do that? Let me know. I'd love to help you. That one took 22 years of research and 18 months of kick-ass, hard-ass writing.
What do you think about Linda Moulton Howe's book on cattle mutilations?
An Alien Harvest?
Yes.
I don't, Linda helped train me as a she was the person most responsible for my bedside manner and how I'm able to investigate these cases and interview witnesses. She's an incredible interviewer. And she taught me some things very early on that I've used ever since. However, I think it's important for us to be intellectually honest and not throw data out just because it doesn't conform to a particular theory you might have. And
Right.
unfortunately, the idea of aliens coming down and eviscerating cattle and taking away parts that we don't find valuable, it just doesn't make sense. If they want genetic material, they could break it into an abattoir or a slaughterhouse, and they've got thousands of gallons of genetic material that's already been harvested for them. It's obvious that these animals are being taken because of where they live in the environment. This is an environmental monitoring process. It has nothing to do, at least, what little data we have does not suggest that ETs are behind this. I do think there is something high strange. Why do we have cases that are documented all the way back to 1605 in England? I think there is something high strange that is a predatory force and has been engaged in predatory practices for thousands of years, and maybe why humans still to this day sacrifice animals to the gods. I think that there's a tie-in with the practice of ritual blood sacrifice, and I'm the only one that thinks this. Unfortunately, there's very few other people that want to even contemplate this as being a possibility. It makes a hell of a lot more sense in terms of explaining the real high strange cases, which only represent a few percent of all cases. And let's put it this way. I personally was out on around 200. Out of those, 40 of them were definitely done by something with it, some form of intelligence. And out of those 40, 8 or 9 were done with a sharp implement or some sort of instrument of high heat. Was able to cut and cauterize the wounds and boil the hemoglobin along the cut edges. My litmus test that I go, any case that I'm called out on, the first thing I would look for is cut hair follicles, because the majority of cases are done with sharp cutting instruments, and they cut hair.
Right.
And insects and birds and coyotes and maggot blooms, they don't cut hair in perfectly straight lines. And so, I've talked to enough veterinarians and veterinarian pathologists and been able to come up with a list of things that I look for that instantly indicates whether the case is high strange or not. And out of those 200 cases, 40 of them were done with intent. And out of those, there were 8 or 9, 10 that,
Let me ask you this.
were quite disturbing.
So to your point about the slaughterhouse, which that adds that's something to think about. But I want to propose this. Like, do you think that because the typical cows that are going to be sent to slaughterhouse, I mean, they're fed estrogen and hormones and antibiotics, whereas those perhaps out near Skinwalker, they're fed naturally, organic.
Organic, yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that there might be something to that?
Yeah, we have never had a case, to my knowledge, in a major stockyard, where you have 10,000 to 100,000 cattle. We just don't have any cases that come from, big agro. I mean, let's get real. Beef produce more income for the agro business than any other portion of its income producing ability. I mean, cattle are the biggest cash crop, if you will, for big agro. And I don't think it's by accident, and your point well taken. I don't think it's by accident that we haven't seen any cases in a feedlot. We've had supposed aliens sneaking around a feedlot, but they weren't mutilating cattle or gathering anything, as far as the eyewitnesses could attest to. So, for every theory that you come up with to try to explain this, there's enough data to support that particular assertion or that particular provisional theory. But what makes it really frustrating is each, whether it's Satanists or the government or aliens or it's just predators and scavengers, there's enough evidence to support that, but there's way more evidence to refute it. So everything has enough to make it possible, or give it some sort of rational a chance of being correct. But it just is totally trashed by any other, by all the other information.
So if I can jump in here, so you're not disputing, or you're 100% on board that there is something going on there, that there is activity there, but when it comes to the cattle mutilations, you think that might be overplayed? Is that what I'm getting?
No, if you start to factor in the role of the media in propagating belief in these things, then yes, I would agree with you. But up to the point that we were at in the conversation, no, I think it's people not being up to speed on what happens to animals when they die. 2% of all livestock die every year. Ranchers and farmers see death routinely. And they pretty much, you would think, would know what they're looking at, but they can even be fooled. I've had quite a number of ranchers say, look at my cow, my Bessie, my best breeding cow. Look at that. They drained her of blood. And it's like, well, maybe not. Here, help me. And so we flipped the thing over, and all the fluids that come out of the various orifices and incisional areas. And I'd say, well, there you go. Gravity just took it down into the bottom of the body cavity, and looking down at it in, bright sunny day in the pasture, looking down into the body cavity of a cow on the ground. It's like looking up and thinking that, every dark-colored helicopter that flies by is a black helicopter. It's the same sort of thing. The eye and the way the rods and cones work, just a cursory look at something can be deceiving. You got to cut into the meat. If it's grayish or maybe slightly pink, then the animal's been drained of blood. But these animals, the vast majority of them are not drained of blood.
Okay, I have a question for you, Christopher. In regards to the variety of animals that have been mutilated other than cattle, can you elaborate on that?
I mean, almost every warm-blooded animal. I've had people report a coyote mutilated lying next to a mutilated cow. Go figure. Had rabbit mutilation report. But 90% at least are cattle. Horses are probably number 2. Sheep, number 3. Goats and pigs. Deer, antelope, pronghorn. We had a bison mutilated at the base of Pikes Peak, which is or Cheyenne Mountain, which is where the underground NORAD facility is. Right there at the bottom on the north side of NORAD, there's a zoo, the Cheyenne Mountain Zoo, and a buffalo was mutilated in a cage, in a pen with a top on it. And not only did the veterinarian at the zoo do a complete necropsy, but the county coroner came out and did his own independent necropsy. And then three or 4 months later, around on the southeastern side of the mountain where the entrance is, to go underground. Right within sight of the door, a cow was found mutilated right out in front on the doorstep of NORAD, believe it or not. We had a wallaby that was mutilated in a zoo in Dartmouth, England, and again, about 3 months later, a wallaby was mutilated in a cage at the Jackson, Mississippi Zoo.
Tiny kangaroo.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what's up with that? The correlations and the synchronicities and the coincidences are just mind-blowing in this.
I've heard that squirrels sometimes are even mutilated.
Yeah, I've only seen one.
That's interesting to me.
And humans. There's been a number of cases of people. Don Ecker, who was a publisher for UFO magazine for years with his wife Vicky. He has Dark Matters Radio. He was a cop in Pennsylvania, and he contacted a bunch of his buddies and tried to figure out if there was any truth to rumors of mutilations going on in New Jersey and in Pennsylvania. And he spent 3 years, shaking the tree. And basically he was told, he was warned off. He said, don't go digging in here. No, you don't want to go there. This is not something that you want to, tackle. And, he was very gracious and said, man, I'd be honored if you would put my paper in your book. So I made sure that Don's information that he uncovered about human mutilations was included. And there have been some. Right. There have been.
I have a question for you from the chat room, Christopher. Roxana Norvay wants to know, how do you explain the caged mutilated animals?
There's a small percentage of cases that have a high strange paranormal element to them. And like the case on the so-called Skinwalker Ranch, where now these animals weren't mutilated, but this gives you an idea of the tricksterism going on here, and there's a lot of it. Terry Sherman had very high dollar cattle there. They weren't just hybrids built for the meat industry. They were pedigreed animals with papers and everything. And he had 9 bulls. And one day he came home and none of the bulls were around. He looked everywhere, and they thought that they'd been ripped off. I guess I would. And he said that they found them. I forget how he said they found them, but somehow they were alerted to look in their horse trailer. And so they opened up the horse trailer, and the bulls were stacked like cordwood, groggy and starting to wake up. But they were piled one on top of another to cram them into this horse trailer, and the lock still had cobwebs on it. When they opened up the lock to get in there, and then subsequently they found the cattle in there, the lock looked like it hadn't been opened in years. I always found that one.
So it makes you wonder how they got in there. Yeah.
I had a case in Eagle, Colorado, where the cow was in a locked potato barn. Same kind of deal. We haven't been down in that thing in months. And they go in there and they find a freshly mutilated animal in there. These high strange cases, there is something that doesn't have to do with the government. It doesn't have to do with, well, maybe it could be aliens. You can't factor that out. But it's not scavengers and predators. It's not mundane and explainable, and it's not being done by our government. And I think the government's involvement is trying to figure out what that core group of cases is, who the perpetrators are, why are they doing them, and I think that's why so many helicopter sightings have been reported after mutilations occur. The following day, you'll have military and standard aviation in the form of helicopters, very interested in these sites, and there's been at least 300 plus, documented sighting reports of helicopters in and around areas where there's mutilations.
What do you think Robert Bigelow's take is on this? Because this is something that's of interest to him anyway. It always has been. What is he? Do you have any idea or insight what he believes this to be?
Him personally, no, I don't. I would love to know. I do know what Colm Kelleher thinks, who was his managing director for. He was the one that helped administer the $22 million ASOP program.
No,
Who's that?
yeah.
There's Colm Kelleher and he was the go-between between Bigelow Aerospace and the government. The ASOP folks.
Right.
He was the one that hired people, and he's the one that had the 32 different 40 different papers published from everybody from Hal Puthoff to there was a whole slew of people that submitted papers to ASOP.
Anything telling in those papers?
Go look; they're online. They're at the Black Vault. They're all there
for our listeners right now.
One thing I'm going to say.
Yeah, there is.
Bigelow stated point blank. He said, "You don't have to look for aliens in space.
They're already here."
They're already here.
Yeah, well, that could. I've been saying there's other tenants in the building here for 30 years more probably. I think that's. It's obvious. They showed up in 47 after we started popping off nuclear weapons. Why? Because we were putting them in danger because they're here. We were putting them in harm's way. And that's why they showed up. And that's why a lot of those early sightings pre-1950 were flotillas of objects.
Right. I have a question for you. What are your thoughts on the multiple paranormal UFO cryptid events over the Uintah Basin, especially the elementals and the dogmen sightings around 2009?
It's not just the Uintah Basin. I mean, we just had a case. I live in upstate New York, just over the border with Pennsylvania, halfway between Binghamton and Corning. Right below me in Pennsylvania is Tioga County, just slightly west of us, and then on the other side of the border, which is just 6 miles from me, 7 miles, is Tioga County. Lon Strickler just had a really interesting report come in from 2020 of multiple dogmen surrounding a guy in his car after he almost hit one and skidded off into the ditch. And the thing walked around his car with its claws on the glass. Scared the bejesus out of him. Then he saw another one. Then he saw another one. So, and this whole Skinwalker's in the Pentagon book written by, I think it was a head research scientist for the Department of Defense and Intelligence Agency. He was like one of the top guys in the DIA. He went out to the Skinwalker Ranch, so-called, and he wasn't the first one to bring home to Virginia some weird dogmen that, his family was seeing out in the backyard. And then the friends of the family were starting to see them. Almost like knowledge about it was spreading like a virus within some sort of weird paranormal continuum. So the hitchhiker effect is something I'm very, very interested in. And we've had incredible cases where cryptids have been seen in conjunction with UFO sightings. My favorite from Stan Gordon up in central Pennsylvania. He was there within an hour of a craft landing, in a fairly rural farm area, and it landed, and these hairy guys were seen, in the same vicinity that night, and they even fired on them, and these things that were picked back up and taken away, And Stan was there. He was called and immediately was dispatched to go out to the area. Very, very compelling case. We've had other cases too where, Bigfoot. I love the Clearview case, the Katie Grabowski, ranch there, and I think it's Elbert County in Colorado. The case I knew about for years, but didn't know, it was kept confidential and anonymous. But now Katie's come forward, and the whole thing with the Bigfoot holding the blinking box and the Air Force officers showing that they had control over it. What's up with that?
So I've heard a story actually of a firefighter and his wife and his kids inside their house, and they heard something outside, and so he got his gun and went outside in the yard, and a group of dogmen surrounded him, and he couldn't get back inside because he didn't know what to do because of the way they were acting in an aggressive kind of hostile nature.
Right.
Is that the Kelly, Kentucky case?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I know her.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah, that's it right there, man. That's what they saw right there. Yep.
Yeah.
So it's safe to say then that there is cryptid, there's dogmen, there's blue spears, there's portals, there's a 6-ton craft markings, Bigfoot. So this is all around or happening within Skinwalker, but there are some cases, obviously, that don't hold up. Basically what you're saying, right? That it gets overplayed, but that's a lot of activity.
Yeah, and in the cattle realm, it's very easy to see why that is. If you have a number of events happen, generally, it's the first ones of a wave will be the high strange ones, and then it's like there's a bunch of copycat cases around it, usually on about a 30 to 40 mile square east, west, north, and south of that case. You'll have a perimeter number of cases that happened in the region. And those are the ones that get picked up by the regional media. And as soon as an area of the country hears through the media that there's some sort of weird thing going on killing cattle, everybody's got their eyes open for dead cows. And so they're driving along, they'll see a cow laying down, they'll go out and they'll look at it, and they won't know what they're looking at because they had never been, they see a dead animal, you kind of go the other way. Normally because they smell bad, but even if that's not the case, it's repulsive to people. They don't want to see 900 pounds of dead, decaying flesh. It's sad.
Hey, Chris, there's a question in chat. If you saw the portal yourself, if you've ever seen the portal, what would it look like?
The type of portal that I think that they're referring to is what Terry and Gwen Sherman and their family described, and what other witnesses for NIDS described, and that is the aperture-like thing opening in the sky from the center out, and then it's opened up at night, and on the other side it was daylight with blue sky and clouds. So there seems to be some sort of time thing going on, time proximity element.
Do you think there's a time travel element to Skinwalker?
Yeah, could be, sure. I also think that there's holographic projections and PSYOPs weapons platforms that are being tested out and taken on dry runs. I think there's a lot of stuff being piggybacked on top of the actual core natural phenomena that's going on.
How about this? The lights coming out of the top of the ridge.
It's fairly common in hotspot areas around at least around North America. Yeah, I've seen them in the San Luis Valley, where I was.
We did have a chat member by the name of Snoopson who asked the question of, did you see the portal drawings that were on the cave, on the rocks at Skinwalker?
I would disagree with that particular interpretation of that glyph.
Right.
One thing that I do pride myself on is being a nosy white boy, befriending native elders in the Southwest, and I did I still attempt whenever possible to strike up relationships with Native Americans, especially law enforcement and elders. And based on what I've learned from them, those glyphs were not, that's not what those glyphs
Okay,
represented.
I have a couple different questions for you, Christopher.
Mm-hmm.
First off, can you describe the south part of the Uinta Basin near the oil fields where there is a hot spot of activity?
The whole area is a hot spot of activity. There've been stories of these roughnecks and wildcatters and stuff driving around late at night, being followed by lighted objects. Some pretty amazing stories of entire nights for hours playing hide and seek with these lights down near the Bookshelf Cliffs, further over to the east, down towards the border north of Rifle, Colorado. I'm not sure where you got these, but
These are supposedly from Skinwalker.
oh, that whole area. I think it's extremely remote. There's hardly anybody lives there. The people that do live there usually are they work their tails off during the day, and they're tired. They're not out at night for the most part, and it's only when they're traveling to and from places that that's when you tend to get good reports. But that's not always the case. I mean, they're oil fields and oil and gas fields, for some reason, seem to be very attractive to aerial phenomena, and for some reason, they have an inordinate amount of sighting events that are reported from there, with many, many fewer numbers of witnesses to report them. So, your chances of seeing something strange,
Right.
Working as an oil field worker or gas field worker is way more advanced than your average housewife.
Or possible, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you say there was areas that are actually even more active than
Yeah.
Skinwalker?
Yeah.
Or did I understand that?
I think Skinwalker's in many ways it's a red herring, and I think they're also playing around with the exposure to the public of Skinwalker. And well, even before the TV show, I think as soon as OSOP got in there, I think they certain individuals in the intelligence services saw that this was a really good way to come up with some counterintelligence experiments to see how they are what the response in the public is upon learning about this. And I think the San Luis Valley is a lot of the aerial activity down there is the government trotting out, conventional and unconventional aircraft and lighting them up like they're
Right.
something they're not. I've seen it with my own eyes. So
Skinwalker's private property, though, right? So that
it doesn't matter. Everybody says it's Skinwalker, that 500 acres. That's just that's a drop.
No, I'm saying for
drop in the bucket, man.
People to get in and start doing their investigations. If it was public property, you probably couldn't do as much mining or investigative work, right?
No, I disagree.
Wow.
It's easier to do it if it's public property, and if you're involved in ownership of the property, obviously it's carte blanche for you to do anything you want to do. Hence my point. As soon as Bigelow folded NIDS, got the $22 million from OSAP, and had all 5 intelligence agencies involved there, and them finding out that they were hitchhiking home wolfmen or dogmen, if that story can be believed, you're damn right they're going to see the tremendous counterintelligence potential and psychotronic warfare applications Look at some of the people that have been kicking around on the periphery of this thing. Kit Green, Dr. Kit Green from Wayne University's, was in charge of, I think, psychotronic weapons development. Didn't he run the weird desk at the CIA for a while? He was the one that got off the plane with the guys in the jumpsuits off the C-130, right? A couple days after Rendlesham, and they were the ones that conducted the official investigation. No insignias, nobody knew who these guys were, and I saw an interview with Charles Holt where he says, "Oh yeah, Kit Green was the one in charge of those guys." And it's like, whoa, I didn't know that. Anyway, your same cast of characters keeps popping up: John Alexander, Ron Pandolfi, Russell Targ, Hal Puthoff, Eric Davis. These are very, very bright individuals with umpteen degrees and everything from theoretical physics to, in the case of John Alexander, he has a doctorate in death. And he was the head of our non-lethal weapons development program at Los Alamos. What's wrong with that picture?
Do you think there's anything underground there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, because I asked earlier if you had ever spoken.
Throughout all the Southwest, there's...
Right.
I mean, when we did Dumpster, which is a deep underground, what is it, monitoring, I forget what the acronym stands for, but it's a satellite that we can steer around the planet and map the going down into the Earth's crust. Now, some people say it can go down 500 feet. Other people say it can go down 1,500 feet. And other people say it can go way down.
Okay.
Where do you think the first place that they mapped was? This is back in 98.
500 feet.
No, but where did they map first?
Nevada.
Yeah, Nevada.
Giza.
Wow.
Giza.
That makes sense.
Where was the second place? Sense. Where was the second place they mapped?
Oh, no.
The Yucatan.
Huh.
Where was the third place they mapped? The Southern Rocky Mountains.
Wow.
Where I was. Well, look it up. DUMBSTR. Dumpster.
Yeah, Bigelow made that comment a while back that they were right below our feet. So I was thinking perhaps referring to the Skinwalker Ranch area, or do you think he was just saying that in general?
I think they're also in the bottom of the deepest trenches on the planet in the oceans.
Yeah, sure.
I think we have a whole intelligent, probably a number of intelligent species that live underwater. There's the swimming aquaman in Lake Baikal. There's, stories that go back into the mythologies. The fishmen that came out, Anumu, whatever it was, Assyrians, Taka Oanes, the fish god that came out and taught man technology. Now, what's a fish guy coming out of the water teaching us technology? What's wrong with that picture? And it's interesting that the Navy, the U.S. Navy, has by far the oldest intelligence service in the government. 1882. The next oldest is 1950, I think, or 49, the CIA. 47.
Of investigating UFOs way back when.
I think the Navy's monitoring activity going and coming from the Earth's oceans, and some large freshwater bodies as well.
Now, that portal that you heard about at Skinwalker, going back for a minute, those 40-foot triangles that came through, do you think that they are from some type of interdimensional source or a different place and not being manipulated by, say, exotic technology used by our government?
I'd love to see the files that they got. I could analyze those and get
Right.
back to you on that. I'm not going to venture a guess. I think it, like I said, I think it's a kaleidoscope of various players, various agendas, overlapping agendas. I think some of the groups are in conflict with other members of other groups. I'm pretty convinced that deaths have occurred as a direct result of interaction with some of the more nefarious things going on up there. I've gotten in trouble for digging into that. I've had people send me emails, people that you don't want even them to know who you are, let alone sending you kind of angry emails. It's just not healthy.
You mean the non-lethal weapons developer?
Debunker? Is that
No,
what you said?
developer. The non.
Well, his was funny. He said, "What's this about aliens eating people?" That's what John said. But some of the others were whatever. I end up spending a lot of time doing damage control.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
That humans had also been cut open and mutilated, right? There were cases of actually humans having to withstand that.
I have never seen, except for the Girapiranga case, which is non-UFO related. I have never seen real slam dunk documentation.
Proof of it.
That proves it. But based on very good sourcing and lots of research and basing a lot of my research on what other people have found, I would say yes, these cases do happen. I think that David Pilates might be onto something in the missing 411 cases. Maybe a lot more of these cases are going on than we know about because we're not finding the remains. See, the thing about the cattle mutilations, they leave them behind so that no report's going to be made. No, and the rancher's not going to spend money and raise a stink over a lost investment. So it's a self-negating mystery. The highest strange cases, the weirder the case, the less likely it is for the rancher to actually report it. It's only when he thinks he's being victimized by the government, he sees helicopters, he thinks maybe a neighboring rich rancher's trying to drive him out of business. That's something you don't hear about very often. But I've definitely got one case. I got 3 ex-county sheriffs publicly stating that this guy was aiding and abetting helicopter crews that were coming down and mutilating cattle on his neighbors' ranches. So, the power of the beef industry and their potential role in at least the cattle portion of our discussion, I think not enough emphasis is placed in that particular direction.
I've actually heard that they're doing that and taking the soft tissue to determine how much poisoning or radiation is in the grass that the cows are ingesting.
I predicted a mutilation wave. As soon as Fukushima happened, I predicted that the West Coast, which hardly ever gets any mutilation cases, they're all east of the Rockies. And maybe the reason for that is all that pollution from Nevada blew east of the Rockies and deposited above ground, radiation in the Midwest, the upper Midwest, Canada, all the way to the East Coast. And then it peters out around the Ohio River Valley. And those are the areas of highest concentrations of the cattle deaths. And because we don't have above ground nuclear radiation, could possibly explain why we don't have lots of cases in western Nevada, California, Washington, Oregon, and parts of western Idaho. And I told David Perkins, I said, this big plume of radiation that came over from Japan right after the tsunami, 4 days later, it's going to generate some cases. If your theory about the radiation Downwind, downstream is where these cases occur. And sure enough, we had 21 cases in Oregon. Now, it took 10 years, but it happened. No, not 10 years, 7 years.
Yeah,
7 years later, we had a big wave.
Yeah, I heard they're trying to find out if it's going to end up in the food chain.
Well, the thing that they're most afraid of ending up in the food chain is prion disease.
Right.
And, there's been a many 1,000% increase in dementia deaths in this country. And these people are not being autopsied. We really don't know what they're dying from. And, dementia symptoms mimic the same symptoms that you have with Creutzfeldt-Jakob's disease, mad cow, chronic wasting disease, scrapie. These are the types of spongiform encephalopathies that occur in warm-blooded animals. And in nature, it only occurs naturally in 1 in a million people. And I did a talk, my first talk about my new book, Stalking the Herd, I did to 100 people. And afterwards, 6 people came up to me and told me about a relative or a friend they knew that had died of Creutzfeldt-Jakob's disease. Now, what's wrong with that picture? I mean, I should have had, nobody come up and say that, for all the lectures I've ever given. And invariably, somebody will come up and mention that. But I was really amazed in Minnesota, which has been particularly hard hit by chronic wasting disease, and was the very first 70s mutilations occurred in Minnesota. I find it very, very interesting that six people knew somebody that died of prion disease.
I'm from Minnesota.
There you go.
Yep.
So,
I do want to ask you something about the Skinwalker legend. Can you describe the Dene Skinwalker and what their purpose was, what they actually were, and what they did to the Utes?
yeah, it's almost a college level course. It's really difficult to put Skinwalkers into context without putting the Dene into context and then applying the Skinwalker to that context of the Dene. The Dene are the most recent additions to Native Americans in the lower 48 states. They arrived just before the Spanish. Most people don't know that. They think that they've been here for thousands and thousands of years. They haven't. They've only been here since the 13 and 1400s. The Apache got here a little sooner, but and they're both like first cousins. They speak a very similar language. They're Athabascan people. They probably came from parts of eastern Mongolia and Tibet and in Siberia. And when they came here, they dispossessed the Pueblo people, and that's why you have all these missing, groups of people in all these cliff palaces and Pueblos, is because they were basically chased out by the Apache and Navajo. So one thing that they did adopt when they came over, they're cultural appropriators. Now, if you talk to a Navajo and he gives you the Navajo creation story, they copied the Pueblo people's version of it and just put their own spin on it. But one thing that they've done is come up with the concept of a skinwalker, and this is just a description of one of their supposed abilities, which is shape-shifting. And they're actually witches, and it's part of the Navajo witchery way. And it's, I really have to go into a lot of establishing information about how you become one. I don't think there's many of them around anymore, and probably haven't been for a while. I think the main thing that they're used for by people is, if you get pissed off at somebody about something, you find out about a skinwalker through particular channels, and you hire them to do somebody evil or wrong that you're pissed at. And so they're like spiritual hitmen, if you will, in a way. And they're very mercenary. They don't have any real agendas on their own. They're available for your agenda. And if you mess with them, then you don't want to get more than one skinwalker just interested in messing with you. Let's put it that way. But I've talked to a number of law enforcement officials, John Downs and Stanley, the two Navajo Rangers, Stanley Milford. They've had some run-ins. Skinwalkers have been thrown in jail as animals and supposedly turned into humans before the sun came up. And they were found dressed in the skins of the animal that was put in the cage. There have been cases where they've been able to run alongside cars, police cars, doing 60, 70 miles an hour. There are cases of them of tracking them, tracking the human footprints, and then they turn magically within a square foot into a human footprint, or go from animal to human or human to animal. I find it interesting that a guy I worked with, he was in the shipping room of a studio I worked at in Arizona. He was Dene, and he found out that I was researching about skinwalkers, and he told me that he was actually trained to be a skinwalker, and when he found out what his final test was, he wouldn't do it. And one of the things he said was, if you identify a skinwalker by name and publicize that knowledge, the skinwalker will die within a day. And within a day of his interview coming out in a video called Mysterious Creatures of the Southwest that I helped produce, within a day of that video coming out, his uncle died, who was the one that tried to get him into his particular witchery way coven, or whatever they call themselves, a skin group of witches. And I found that very compelling, having heard the supposed, that's why skinwalkers supposedly are so careful, because they can't be outed. They use a form of magic that involves corpse powder. It involves sympathetic and intentional magic. They use hair clippings, hair from a brush, anything that was part of you. They can use that. They can, if you lock eyes with them, their eyes shine at night, but when they're in their animal form, they don't. But when they're in their regular human form, their eyes will shine in headlights. What was the other thing I was just going to say? Let's put it this way: they're really nasty, and I wouldn't recommend travel. I wouldn't travel on certain roads on the Navajo reservation at certain times of the year and at certain times of the night.
So you think that's still happening at Skinwalker Ranch, or do you think there's something
No.
happening there? So Skinwalker really has nothing to do with what's really happening there. It's more
No. The whole thing of trying to tie the ranch into Skinwalkers, to me, is it's a marketing program that's going on. The Utes have a completely different magical system.
Right.
They've adopted some things from the Pueblo people, but very little. The Paiutes, the Utes, the Cree, or the Crow, the Arapaho, they're a whole different deal. And This whole thing about the Utes, skinwalkers being sicked on the Utes because they helped, Sheridan and William Tecumseh Sherman to subjugate the Navajo and put them out on the Front Range, in internment camps. No, skinwalkers, they don't work that way. It's like accusing mafia hitmen for some sort of war between Canada and France or something. It just doesn't make any sense. Knowing what I do about the tradition, skinwalkers are, they come in, they help you, they get paid to do something, they do it, and that's it. They don't maintain contracts, to my knowledge.
How do you think it got the name then? Who really named that ranch? Who named the ranch that?
Combe Kelleher and George Knapp.
George Knapp.
Wow.
Yeah.
That makes sense, though, because the marketing of Skinwalker is huge now.
Yeah. Yeah, and Brandon Fugel's, trademarked the whole thing. That was part of the purchasing price, I imagine.
Kind of erodes the research, doesn't it?
No, not at all. No. In fact, the research at the heart of it is some of the things that I'm working on. The MSDAU software package, Mission Control, that they're using to coordinate their cameras and do motion detection and follow motion. I've been working with the engineer that's been devising that. We're in 9 countries right now, 43 different locations. Here he is, it's Mr. Ron. That's our high-res camera with the sensor pack underneath it. It's all based on Raspberry Pi. It's open source. We have recording magnetometers, accelerometers, radio frequency spectrum analyzers. You can get cameras that have analog blaze gratings on them, so at night you can break your object footage into light spectra. This when they say, what is the future of ufology? This is the future of ufology. It's setting up these triangulated systems and gathering data at hotspot locations. It's been a dream of mine for 25, 30 years. And now the technology has come up in quality and the price has gone down so that you can do this for $300-$400. You could have your own UFO detection system going on.
Or it used to be like $15,000 just for a gas-filled dome.
It's way more than that for a total system.
I used to be a Vicon. I had government contracts for some.
Yeah. So and you add in forward-looking infrared and radar and some other things which we've all taken into account. There's 6 different inputs or outputs from the inputs and outputs from the MSDAU, the OS or the sensor pack. In other words, it's watertight and environmentally friendly from -50 to 120 degrees, so it can be in direct sunlight. It's got its own air conditioning, its own heat.
Sure.
So yeah, to me that's where we're going to really start to discover some very interesting scientific things that are going to totally flip the UFO ridicule boat on its head. We're still battling uphill against these people in their smarmy comments and the titillation. Oh, the government's even looking into it now. Yeah, right.
No, they're not.
Good for a long time. Yeah.
Well, I want to tell everybody that the organization is known as UFO Data Acquisition Project. You can find it on Google, UFODAP. Check it out. Go over there and check out their systems, their research, everything. It's so much research. I couldn't show it all here tonight. I went through a lot of it. It's just amazing. So thank you, Christopher, for working on that. I really do appreciate that.
Yeah, people call me a ufologist, and I quickly correct them and ask them politely, don't call me that.
You're a researcher and a journalist, correct?
I'm an investigative journalist, yeah, basically. I like to think of myself as an anomalist, or
That works.
on my off hours, an ecstatician. Anyway, I think it's I don't want to be known as a ufologist, but if I was going to do something that involved UFOs, it would be UFODAP. So
Gotcha. And you've been doing that for several years, haven't you?
almost 20.
20.
It's been a long road, but having met Ron Olsch and having a world-class engineer and designer, and he's, I think, a member of SCU, and it's been working. We're working with an outfit called UFODAP. They wanted to do what we did, but we beat them to the punch. And that's the Kufos guys, Rob Switek and Mark Rodiger and Alexander Wendt. These are guys that are involved with Robert Powell and SCU. They're very enthusiastic about what we're doing, and we've presented at a couple of their events, and it's hard to argue with coming up with ways to do good science. I love all the spooky stuff and the anecdotal data, and all these wonderful events that we have to go data mining with. I love all that, and I've got the largest database of unusual events from a single geographic region, for instance, I've compiled. And you can find out a lot. You can find patterns, you can find potential rationales for why the patterns are present. But there's nothing like real-time data, especially when it's multi-platform. And that's why the ATEP and the gimbal footage is so important, is because they claim that they have all these other sensors that also gather data, and that's why they were willing to come out with it, because go ahead, argue with this, and so I think that UFODAP is very well positioned to help people become part of the solution and not continue to become part of the problem by not being educated and not knowing what the hell they're looking at.
Right. Hey, Christopher, that one piece of equipment that your engineer had in that one picture was also used during the Caroline Corey.
They were using
the sky, right?
a UFODAP system. Yeah, it was the one that triangulated the sensors, and then they had FLIR as well on top of it. Yeah,
right.
That was one of the extra inputs. Of course, it would have been nice if they could have mentioned us a little bit more. Right. Gary Voorhees was on the Skinwalker Ranch show, and he renamed the electronics and the system Osiris, and it's like, yeah, but it's UFODAP.
Well,
Yeah, probably stung.
well, now we know. Everybody knows because they heard it here on UFO Man.
Yeah. Well, we're here to help everybody. We're not making money on this.
Right.
We're turning this gear over at cost plus. We're trying to set up and customize systems for your budget and for your needs and what you're trying to accomplish. So, I mean, we can go all the way up to 10 grand if you want to start putting in radar, and sky's the limit if you want forward-looking infrared. Right. To see something 20 miles out and have a good high-res FLIR image, that's an expensive unit.
Right.
So.
Okay, well, what we want to do here now is recognize the members of the channel, because I haven't done that yet. So here we go. Here are the members of the channel: Joshua 420, Angel Wings, My Flock is Everywhere, Jennifer Sosi, Cable Guy, RVN Medic Beats, Mr. DB Cooper 77. And last week I got Unidentified S4 and Pinzer Flactum. So welcome to the channel, and I'm going to play you a little clip here as a welcome to the channel. Here we go. Thank you for joining the channel. I also have to give a shout out to my sponsor, who happens to be UFO Expo. UFO Expo is going to be next month, March 10th, 11th, and 12th in Roswell, New Mexico at the Convention Center.
Yeah.
And Tom Reed, that's his baby. So if you can get a chance to go out and get a ticket before the convention and go to Roswell and check it out, there's going to be a lot of things going on. So here we go.
We've got a better one now.
Yeah, we got a better one, but you didn't send it to me, so so I had to do that.
Yeah.
And let's go around the panel and take last comments. Tom, any last comments?
No, I just hadn't seen Chris in a while. I think the last time I saw you was in Arizona.
Probably, yeah.
2015, 2016. We're hanging out there. And let's see, before that, maybe Tennessee.
Tennessee, yeah. That's where I met you.
Yeah. And it was probably 2011, 12, something like that.
Yeah, I think so. 2000. No, I think it was 2010, maybe.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
It was a while ago.
Yeah. It was you, me, and Travis, I think, right?
Right. Yeah. And Eddie, dear Eddie Middleton, I really liked him. And
He passed.
yeah, I know. He's and Bruce Whitteman too, out there in Missouri. He was another one that I'm missing. He used to make this seasoning spice that I don't know how many of those he sent me over the years, but he probably would send me 2 a year for 20 years. So
Gotcha.
I loved it.
Sauce. I make a hot sauce.
Nice.
It's really hot though. Carolina Reapers, Scorpion.
Oh,
Yeah.
I make barbecue, so there you go.
yeah. There you go.
Okay.
Yeah, you got to have Ron Riguera on. He's a world famous barbecue chef. He won so much money that they wouldn't let him enter any of the prize contests, and they convinced him to become a judge. And so that's what he did for years, is go around the country and judge chili bake cook-offs.
What a good job that is, right?
Yeah, really. He told me some cool stories. Anyway, Ron and Maleva, who I mentioned to you in my email, Maleva's been having stuff showing up right outside his house, and he and Ron had a camouflage craft land next to them in broad daylight as they were driving by, and they got really good photographs of it. And Maleva has these things that hang outside. He's woken up and kind of instructed to go out with his camera, and I mean, I don't know what to make of this stuff. I'd really like to get Ray Stanford to analyze it, or Mark D'Antonio's never actually admitted that he's seen a real UFO in any photograph. What a great guy to have as your chief analyst.
He's a really good friend of mine, actually.
I like Mark. I like Mark. I just like to give him a bad time too. I love going to a UFO conference and then being taught the Big Bang
by someone who wasn't. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah,
and wrapped in.
A lot of these book writers, right? They write all these books about stuff, but they've never had an experience or seen anything.
Yeah, boy, that's why I write books, because.
Well, that's why we have one, man. Because
my record is 5 separate sightings in one day.
Really?
Yeah, and 17 phone calls in one day, reporting 5 different events.
I got to tell you this, then. I had 42 sightings last summer.
Nice. Where were you?
I live in southeastern Minnesota, between Winona and Rochester.
Mm-hmm.
And we're in the bluff country, so there's a lot of places for them to hide.
Right.
A lot of trees. and I saw them toward the Big Dipper, and they flew right over the building where I live, and they were pretty low, and they were a bright ball of orange light with like a clear
Yeah.
bubble around the outside.
Right. Well, yeah. When those reddish orange balls show up, hide your kids and cattle.
But I experienced that too when I was a kid. A
Yeah.
lot of we were actually
The red balls of light are almost the only time I ever hear of something negative gets associated with them, whether it's coincidence or synchronicity or, there's been that's the most common unidentified light in the sky that's been associated with UFO sightings.
That's weird because I see a lot of white ones as well doing zigzags.
Yeah, they get reported as well, but less so. They're usually in the area. They're not directly associated with the location.
Right.
They tend to be like an antecedent effect, something that's going alongside.
I did see my first red one last summer at the end of the summer, say in August. First red one I've ever seen, and it was in the trees.
Yeah, yeah. We have one spot on the North Crestone Trail where people have reported this really ruby red, small golf ball sized light that comes right out of the cliff face, and everybody describes this exact same spot, unbeknownst to each other. I was coming back from Denver with my band. We were driving just west of Fort Garland, or east of Fort Garland. And there was like a drop off and then a valley right to our left. And this red ruby light came down and was flying over the valley about maybe 100 feet from us. And it paced right alongside our car. And three of the guys in the car had never seen anything before. Two of us had. And the three that hadn't, they did everything but piss themselves. They were so excited.
Changes your world paradigm.
It does. It does. Especially when you see the real light, the clear. I forget the description that has been given optically for the quality of light that some of these objects are able to shoot off, but it's a different kind of light than what we normally are used to and associate nighttime and lights at night.
I saw one up close and personal.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Orange, it had to roll to it like an ocean wave, and there was a white one not far from it. And Crystal Ship actually had said something about them being in Pine Bush. And where I saw this was, what's now Sheffield, Massachusetts,
Right.
park. Is only about an hour and 15 from Pine Bush. So,
Wow. Oh, I didn't realize you were that close. Yeah.
yeah, Massachusetts, right on the New York line.
Okay, I didn't realize that.
I
Ellen Crystal, what a piece of work she was.
I actually knew Ellen Crystal. I wrote her
I
a
did
letter
too.
a long time ago. Yeah.
Boy, she carved me a new one last time I talked to her.
Who was that?
Ellen Crystal.
She told me not to write her a letter in red ink. Yeah, so
I forget what my deal with her was, but man, she was upset at me.
Can you hear me?
yeah.
Yeah. Mark D'Antonio, who we talked about earlier, doesn't live far from there either.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I think I'm going to be there. I think it's May. Oh no, Mark's going to Contact in the Desert. That's right.
Yeah.
But it looks like I'll be at Pine Bush at the festival.
Cool. I'm not too far from you. I'm over at just on the other side of Binghamton.
An hour and a half, 2 hours. You'd probably go over the down through oh my God, what is it? Sleepy Hollow area. 5 and 15 or something.
Yeah.
Yep. All right.
Yeah. Right. Straight down 15. Right.
Okay. Well. Yeah. Have a beer.
Maybe you guys can meet up.
Yeah. Right.
I was supposed to be at UFO Expo this year, but I can't get there. So next year, hopefully, I'll be there in person. Then I can meet everybody, and that'd be great. All right, we're gonna wrap this up, guys.
Sure.
Thank you, Christopher, for coming this evening. We really
Yeah,
appreciate your graciousness.
sorry about my technical lack of technical expertise, but
Well,
we made it work.
We
Yeah.
made it work, and I learned a lot from you this evening. So thank you very much.
Yeah, man, it was good seeing you again.
Yeah, tip of the iceberg, bro. Tip of the iceberg.
And you're more than welcome to come back anytime if you would like to do
Okay.
so.
Well, you just let me know. I'll be there.
Okay, we will do that. Tom, you want to say goodnight?
Yeah, man. Again, Chris, thanks for your time tonight. Thanks to everybody in the chat. It was a great talk. I learned something. So
Yeah.
good
Well,
having you.
I'm having Ron send you something pertaining to Maleva, and I think it'd be really fascinating to give him as much exposure as possible.
Okay.
He's the last Hopi Snake Clan holy man.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
And he's not going to be around for too much longer. So
Yeah, we talked
Yeah,
about
well-
that briefly. I just don't know who he is, but as long as Tim,
yeah, they're putting something. They're putting together something. Just his photographs and films are worth having him on the show just for that.
Sure.
But all the other stuff. I mean, he has a little statue that was carved by Carlos Castaneda that he has to have chained and put on the porch, and his wife won't let him have it inside. It has to be chained to the railing outside on the porch. I wouldn't know where to begin with him. He's been there and done that and helped design the T-shirt factory.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll definitely look at his information, and
Okay.
we'll get back to you and keep in touch with you to let you
Okay.
know the situation in regards to that.
Yeah.
But I want to thank everybody who watched online and who participated in the chat room and asked questions of Christopher O'Brien. Thank you very much. I want to thank my new members. I want to thank Tom Reed for being here this night. I can't talk. For being here tonight and helping me get this live stream up and running in 1 day's time. So,
Yeah. Good job.
long
yeah.
story. Yeah.
So thank you very much, everyone, and we'll see you next week.
Good night.